We're live.
Hi everybody, welcome back.
Yep, hi, how you doing today?
We are filming from our favorite Cup of Joe in Twin Lakes.
Because coffee is important to candid conversation.
It is, and all I need in the morning is quiet and a good cup of Joe. Or not to see the morning, because I sleep in.
So there we go. We've got our cup of Joe, and we hope that you've got whatever you want in your cup. It's after 12.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere. And if you feel the need to have an alcoholic beverage because you're watching
No
us,
judgment, we talked about that already.
we invite it in. So Nancy, what are we doing today? What are we talking
We're
about?
going to talk about ego and outcome. And again, if you haven't watched the past videos, please do, because it all builds together. We talked last week about kind of creating, like all these pieces are like Legos going together to create a human. And again, everything that we're doing has to do with the desire to be self-aware and to tune into where you're at. I'm Nancy Nelson. I am an author, a speaker, and a coach. This is my book, Lessons from the Ledge. And it's about my journey. It's a memoir, and the link will be in the description below to get that, as well as my website. And if you go on my website, there's a little recording that I got to do a few weeks ago.
Yay.
Of a song that I'm singing, and I'm very proud of it. So that's out there as well.
Okay, and I am Diane Iser. I am the owner of New Day Aging. I am a senior and patient advocate who is very impassioned about changing our aging experience, making it the best that it can possibly be, empowering people to make decisions not based on chronological age. My link will be below as well to my website, so I invite you to come visit me. It'll be everything you ever wanted to know about me that you weren't aware that you wanted to know.
Oh,
So,
there you go.
yeah, there you go.
Everything you wanted to know about Diane, but you were afraid to ask.
Afraid
It's all
to ask.
there.
No. But Nancy and I did want to say one thing before we start with this. I've not said it before, but I'm going to put it out there. Just so that you know, we come at this with our professional backgrounds as well as our personal experiences. And we are here because we care greatly about humanity, and that caring comes from doing our work. Individually, we've done our work, and we just want to share our experiences and hopefully have an impact on people to feel that they might hear something that we're offering, that we've shared, that they might have never heard before, that they can be empowered by. So we just want to cover our bases from the standpoint that we're not out here claiming to be anything more than what we are. We're two gals who are having candid conversation, and we are absolutely thrilled to the people that subscribe to us. We invite more and more people to subscribe to us. We will always keep these conversations quite candid to the point that sometimes you might go, wow.
Where'd that go?
Where'd that go? Where'd that come from? So with that being said, let's
Make sure that
Yes.
you give us a thumbs up, like,
Yes.
share, subscribe.
Please.
I think one of the things that both Diane and I have figured out over our years of experience is that we're a lot more alike than we are different with our fellow human beings out there. And hopefully you'll have something that may resonate with you that will then be something that you can pass on to someone else.
Right.
Interestingly enough, I just came from a wake, and my friend was talking about having read this book, because she knows me, she's a neighbor, and how she has kind of highlighted things and passed it on to her daughter. Now they're all grieving the loss of her ex-husband and her children's father. And, I greeted them, gave them hugs, and said, welcome to the suck, because it's hard, it sucks. And actually, the beginning is, I think, a lot of times the easier part, because you're surrounded by people who are very aware of your loss, and they're very much there to support you. And then life goes on, they move on doing whatever they need to do, and there you are sitting with it. So if you know somebody, or if you yourself have gone through a loss of whatever kind, take a moment to reach out to that person that's going through that, or send them a note and just let them know that you're thinking of them, because there's a lot of times where when the traditions and everything around the death goes away, people go back to their lives, and there you are still with it. And it's nice to know that someone's thinking of you kind of after all of that calms down, when it really is you living in the reality of it. So that's just my little FYI from my standpoint.
And I'm going to jump on the back end of that just for a second. I will tell you this, after losing my husband last year, the one thing I said to people when they were reaching out, like you said, people are there for you right in the beginning. They really are, and you're truly thankful for that. It's when you go home alone for the first time, and the wake is over, and the celebration of life is over. And I remember telling people, I said, you know what? They said, what can we do for you? I said, what you can do for me is be a part of my life after this is all over. After this week, long process that I went through, be there after. Call me.
Right.
Call me. Come see me. Spend time with me. That's what counts. And Nancy's right about that.
Yeah.
So.
And I think oftentimes people are afraid to do that because they don't know where you're at with everything, and they don't want to stir things up, or they don't know what to say. Because I think we talked in one of the other videos about how we're very much like a problem-solving people. We want to make things better. As I told my friend, who is the ex-wife, I said, your role now just became how to support your children in their grief of losing their dad, and a lot of that is just simply being there, holding that space for them, allowing them to feel whatever they're feeling. And I think for us, we want to have some magical phrase we say, or something to make that person we care about not feel badly, or to stop their hurting, and we don't have that.
Right.
So there are some things that, like I told her, you just can't fix it. You can't.
Right.
You can't fix it. You can't solve it. But simply by being there, offering a hug,
Being
offering, hey, let's go out and grab a cup of coffee, or let's go to dinner together, or how are you doing, and then allowing that other person to really tell you the truth. If you're expecting fine, thanks, how are you? Be prepared that maybe, hopefully, you have an honest enough relationship that they can say, you know what, I'm doing okay most of the time, but I really struggle with this, or Father's Day is coming up. That's so loaded for my children, and now will be loaded for my children's friends who are going through their loss right now. Sometimes that day really sucks. Sometimes it doesn't as much. A lot of times it's the lead up and the dread of, like, how am I going to feel that day? That's worse than the actual day itself. And it's, we're hardy people. We can get through pretty much anything. And if you figure that particular day is 24 hours, and of that, maybe you're awake for 12 of it, you can get through that. And you might even find that during that space of time, if you can stay present, you may have a really sweet moment. You may have some tears, you may have some laughs, it's that acceptance of there's no right or wrong way to feel about things. Everybody's grief is unique, and everybody's journey is unique. And yet, in those things, regardless of the circumstances, there are some universal things. And that's why, even though, Diane, your circumstance with losing Russ is far different than mine losing Bob,
Right.
but there are some universal things about grieving, about carrying on, about dealing with your family, or just doing the day-to-day. As I was saying to my son when we were leaving the wake, I said, they don't know this yet, but this is the easy part. Because everyone is surrounding them. It's still fresh. You're so focused on saying, being comforting to those other people, and all of that. The hard part comes, like Diane said, when people go home, when life goes on, when here you are in your reality of your empty house, or in their case, the paperwork you have to do. There's so much paperwork and so much stuff that, like, I couldn't even look at it for the first year, for the most part. I kind of did it when it was an emergency situation, like, well, you got to sign off on this, or we're going to charge you this or whatever.
Me too.
Right,
Same thing.
But not to go down the list and say, okay, what things need to be changed, and simply put in my name or whatever. I will encourage everyone, and I know this probably sounds very, morbid for you, but have your affairs in order, so that that's one less thing that your loved ones that are left behind don't have to deal with. Make your arrangements. Kind of think about, well, do I want it to be a big party? Do I want to buy a burial plot? Do I want to be cremated? Do I have my financial things in order as to how things get left to the next person? I know it may sound morbid and people want to try to avoid it, but none of us get out of here alive. So do that, because that's a great comfort to the people that are left behind to not have to be thinking about that and worrying about that. When my dad passed away, he had his whole service written out, including every scripture he wanted, the songs. Here's where you're going to exit the sanctuary, and here's who's go. It was like, wow, but it was all there. And now the joke is, well, we didn't do that one. I think he's going to come back and get us because we didn't do that one scripture he wanted. It didn't fit in the whole whatever. That was great comfort. Having that taken care of was stuff that was off of our plate as the kids, as my mom being left behind, etc. So that's my little, my experience that I've had, and actually really has no bearing at all on what
on ego and outcome. So that, I think we'll just go right into ego.
That's why it's candid conversations.
That's
you know
right.
what I'm saying?
We go down any path at any time.
Yeah. So today we're talking about ego and outcome. One of the big things, first of all, we all have egos. You're supposed to have an ego.
Yes.
Having a healthy ego is our way of kind of moving through this world that we have.
I'm going to jump in real quick.
Okay.
Hold on, because it's candid.
Okay.
I'd like to say that the definition of ego, so that we're all on the same page, is ego is with regard to, can't speak, to your self-esteem, your self-worth, so that we have
right.
that, and your sense of individuality. So that being said,
right.
Because
well, and the interesting part about that is, it's not an inherently bad thing.
No. It's not.
A lot of it is, keeping things in balance. I think that especially in today's social media age, it's really easy to get your ego kind of wrapped up in how you appear or what you do or drive or whatever, and again, that goes into the whole judgment thing. And I mean, see how all these things like knit together? I think that's so interesting. In that like 5,000 mile view, yes, we all have that. And I think we've all become very aware of where ego is doing the talking for people. There's that balance between, I'm important and I love myself and, I make my own reality and I'm whatever, and it's not all about you. There's a balance in there, and I think that so much of our journey moving forward through this plane, wherever we are here, wherever you are, is finding that balance so that ego becomes something that is inherently healthy because we do understand that we have value and worth, but it isn't so wrapped up in how other people perceive us or us comparing ourselves. I was looking at 10 things when like to kind of check yourself to see if your ego is in control. Well, if it's in control and it's, do you take pleasure in other people's failures? Or are you happy for their success? Do you compare yourselves, to somebody else and what they're doing? And I think that comparison is the robber of joy, because we are individuals with our own egos and no one else is living our life. No one else. I had people all the time when I was going through everything with my loss of Bob. People would say, well, if it was me, I'd do blah, 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 blah. It was like, what'd you know? How do you know that?
Right.
It sounds like, and then the question was, what is the point in saying that? Is you're telling me that building me up and assuring me and saying, hey, I think you're doing a really good job in a really hard time? Or is it somehow to have like a one-upsmanship? Well, I do it better than you. I do it this way. I do it differently. Do you feel better by having said that? Think about the person on the receiving end. Is that helpful for them?
Well, and that brings up a good point, taking us back to previous videos. Mm-hmm. Is that it takes a certain level of self-awareness to do you know what is coming out of your mouth when you say that, and do you know the impact it's going to have on the person you said it to,
or coming out of your fingers when you're texting it, or
whatever way you're communicating that. And it goes back to having a healthy ego. I mean, your ego is based on your self-esteem. So we all know people who have big egos, overinflated egos. Those are the people that are always telling you what to do. They're always right. Then we know people that suffer, their egos are very self-esteem, very low self-esteem. And that is either end of it, polar, either end.
Well,
is
they're the
it-
ones
is
that are
it
most
good?
influenced by that too.
They're going to
Right?
be influenced
You know,
by the ones
if
with
I
the
don't-
overinflated
Right,
ego.
right. It's
Yeah.
still gonna come together to make a whole, and it might be that the egomaniac is way out here, the other person's right here, but
Right.
it's still gonna fill in to get to that place, and they're going to be the most likely to fall for people who are overbearingly powerful,
Exactly
egomaniacs, if
correct.
you will, or I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Tell me, as opposed to someone who has a healthy sense of themselves and a healthy sense of their ego to say, I'm doing what feels best to me and I'm trusting myself.
Exactly.
So I think a lot of it comes down to that, I
Trust
don't trust
yourself.
myself to make a good enough decision because my whole life somebody told me I was a piece of garbage and whatever, blah, blah, blah. It's understanding and realizing that you have worth, you have value, you know what's best for you. And if we can get ourselves out of that place of thinking, I can't put that out there because everyone's looking at me. It's kind of like, do you remember when you were in junior high and you had like a zit and it was like literally like right here?
Mm-hmm.
And you'd walk into the cafeteria and you would think, oh my God, everyone is looking at my zit. I know they are. Oh my gosh. When in actuality, they're all worried about their own zit. You know what I mean?
Right.
But nobody cared.
Nobody would care enough. But yet, that's the unhealthy
That's
part.
where our head's at.
That's the unhealthy part about ego. When ego is healthy, doesn't feel the need to cram their opinion down your throat.
Right.
Okay? I think that's a really good thing to be aware of. Is someone with a healthy ego basically is not trying to get your attention to say, look at me, I have the answers.
Right.
They're not. I think
that comes from being insecure.
Well, there's the
Right?
self-esteem part of ego. There's the self-esteem
Somebody
part.
may seem like they have a really big inflated sense of themselves, and they're the ones that
They're operating
truly,
from low self-esteem.
right. And
That's
it's a
it's a mask.
dichotomy. It's very
It's a mask.
yeah. It's the facade that we have to all drop because honestly, I don't know your experience. If you ask me, like, how did you handle this, Nancy? I would say,
Right.
well, when I was going through XYZ, this is how I did it. But I certainly wouldn't say, and this is what you need to do. And this is
Right.
what you should do. You should, and that's not, because if that's where I was operating from, that would be a real indication to me that my ego was not in balance because somehow I need to be fed from your reaction.
Right, and that's a really good point, and that's something for you to take with you on this, is that when someone is offering advice to you and it's coming from a healthy ego, it's not something that makes you feel shameful.
Right.
It's not something that disempowers you. When someone offers healthy advice, usually there's not, and this is how the ego and outcome comes into play. When you're operating from a healthy ego and a healthy self-esteem and trying to help someone by offering advice, you have no attachment to the outcome of the advice you've given.
Right.
That is really where, if you're wondering where we're going with this, first Nancy's talking a lot about ego, but ego and outcome go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And healthy ego, healthy self-esteem allows you to be connected to someone, to offer your support, but in doing so, you're not doing it from the standpoint you expect that person to do what you say.
Right. What am I
or
getting out of this?
suggest. It's put out there in a genuine care and concern to say maybe perhaps this is another avenue or another tool for you to take. And I don't stand in, here we go, judgment. I'm saying this, I'm not saying because I'm judging you. I'm saying it because maybe my life experience has given me a greater sense of healthy ego and healthy self-esteem that I feel I can offer to support. So that's a key. The outcome on ego is very interesting. When people do things from an unhealthy respect, there's usually some form of outcome they're anticipating. It could be making them feel like a bigger person or a better person because they have all the answers.
Yeah.
That's an unhealthy ego, but they're attached to that outcome because that outcome for them is, okay, I really helped. You know what? I helped Nancy today. She's got to be feeling really good. That's not a healthy ego. That's actually attaching your personal idea of what the outcome of that conversation should be.
All right, I have 2 points I was thinking of as
Okay.
you're talking.
Go for it.
First, wait till someone asks for your advice.
What?
Just a thought.
What, Nancy?
Yeah. Just let's wait until somebody says, hey, I need your advice on something, rather than go, hey, I've got some advice for you. Right? See the difference there? Okay. So that's the first thing. The second thing, and I think what you're talking about, and I had to work on this with my therapist, is grandiosity.
Oh,
Okay?
Yeah.
Which had to do with ego, right?
There you go.
If someone says to me, hey, how should I handle this? And I take it very much to heart and think, let me think about that. And I would come up with I do research and how should we, I need help with this, and I do all these things, right? And I put this time in, and then it would be like I would present what I found out from that person, for the person and their situation, and then they were like, thanks, and then nothing changed, and they wouldn't take my advice, and it used to really, really bother me. And my therapist pointed out and said, that's because you have this sense of grandiosity. You think that because you did this for them, they should therefore do X, Y, Z. So I had this attachment to the outcome. If I give you advice, then my attachment to that is that you're going to take my advice. And if you don't, it just throws everything off. And the other thing with that attachment to outcome is somehow thinking that we know better, right? That's an ego thing. I know better. This is the outcome that I want. This is the outcome that's right. Well, maybe there's far more going on than you really know. Or maybe there's an outcome that's lying ahead that's far better than anything you could create in your conscious mind up here. But when we have that ego thing, we think that, my way or the highway. I know best. And that's where that gets out of balance. And we have to constantly, to me, a great test for where my head's at in the ego thing, which this is a tool to take with you, is like, what do I stand to gain from this? And if you're thinking in terms of, I'm going to talk to this person and we're going to have this conversation and all of that, if there's something in the back of your mind that you feel that you stand to gain something, I'm going to feel better about me because I'll know that talking about the shit show circus of my life is going to help somebody else with their, maybe not. But until you can unclench your fists holding on to that outcome and relax and open up and allow whatever to be, you're still kind of operating out of that ego place of somehow you feel that you know best for everyone. When in actuality, you know best for yourself, but not for the world,
Well, gosh, this is so good, you and I. We don't ever rehearse.
No.
So it's
like, what
funny
are we talking about today?
It's funny how we segue. She's talking, I have no idea what she's going to say, but she brings up an excellent point. And she just tied it all in together about what am I expecting, and you're focused on that outcome, right?
Well, that's how I roll, Diane.
Yeah, I know that's how you roll.
What can I say?
That being said, I've had to do my work on ego and outcome over the course of years. And back when I got diagnosed with breast cancer in 2002, I came across a wonderful tool called mindfulness-based stress reduction. So I'll do my little plug here. It's called Wherever You Go, There You Are by John Kabat-Zinn.
And I think I actually have that same statement in my book.
I bet she does, because this is, and I want to read something to you when I was preparing a little bit here to do this. What Nancy just said, I'm going to confirm this with mindfulness. And mindfulness comes from self-awareness. And self-awareness is something we've been talking about from video one. It's a component that's going to be in every single video we ever do because it's what it always comes back to. One of the things that I wanted to read to you was, and this is a quote from John Kabat-Zinn's book, the deep importance of contemplation and of non-attachment to any result. Now, you might hear that and go, okay, I think I kind of get it, but I don't get it. What that talks about in mindfulness is the fact that so many of us, when we're on automatic pilot and we're not self-aware, we don't realize what's driving us when it comes to our ego. You just brought up a good point. You said if I gave someone advice, I expected they would take it. There was your attachment to an outcome. And I've got a segue to do this, and she's going to laugh when I do this, but there's never been a greater example than last year in 2020. There has been a tremendous amount of ego ruling across this country, okay? People operating from their own ego, and not what I would say a particularly healthy one, because when you feel that you know what's best for someone outside of you, that is not a healthy ego. When you feel you can control the outcome for someone outside of you, that is not a healthy ego.
Well, it's who are you and what gives you the right.
But you're attached
You
to
know?
an outcome.
Right.
You're attached to an outcome that is driven by an unhealthy ego that says, hey, you know what, Nancy? I've got the answers.
Right, I know
I've
that's
got whatever way you had, get the answers. Whether you get them from yourself or you get them outside of yourself, I've got the answers, and I need to be assured that the outcome I want to see you have. And a lot of times, it's very self-motivated. I want it to impact me in a good way. This is not healthy ego.
Well, and think
This
how
is not-
powerful that has to feel. If you know, if you, it's the way that I feel. If I'm talking in front of a large group of people, or I'm singing in front of a large group of people, and or acting, whatever it is, and I have the ability to make them laugh, or make them cry, or make them feel something, that's a really, really powerful thing.
Yes.
Especially if you make them laugh. Making people cry is a lot easier than making them laugh. But you know, you have to then, and I think that's why a lot of people who are in the public eye, a lot of times, you know, you have to kind of like walk away from that. Like I remember I did a concert one time, and I'm like walking around thinking like, wow, I feel like a rock star right now. And I went home and my son threw up on my foot, and I was like, well, there
Back
you
to
go.
reality, Nance.
Right, there's the balance. There's the balance. You're not a rock star. You were in that moment.
You had a moment,
but
you
here's
were-
reality.
But
You know?
and that's key. You were in
Right.
in that moment.
moment.
And that's what wherever you go, there you are is about in mindfulness.
Right.
Which is being present in a moment without attachment to an outcome.
Right.
And when you have healthy self-esteem, you operate from, and there's a place, I'm sure you can agree with this, the way that I keep my ego in the best possible place I can, and I'm not perfect by any stretch of the word, but I'm very aware of this and have been for many years, is humility. Humility has taught me when I've had to be humble. That helps me operate from a healthy ego and a healthy self-esteem. I think that, and that involves being present. That involves being, so in that moment when you felt good about making someone laugh, you should feel good about making someone laugh.
Right.
But it's when we feel good in that moment about making that person laugh, and then we take it to an extreme that's driven
Right.
by an unhealthy ego.
Right. We adopt it as our actual reality of who we are, instead of
Right.
in that moment, here's
Who I was.
Right.
Yeah. That's and I hope you get that or understand that. I hope we're making that a little clearer.
Well, and I think too, you know, the book is called Wherever You
Go,
Go, There You
You
Are,
Are.
right? If you're an asshole, which is what they were telling me out there, I took a little informal poll. We're going to talk about this today. What do you guys think? And they all said, don't be an asshole. And I was like, there you go. That sums that up. So, you know, whether you are here or there with your family or somewhere else or on your own or whatever, wherever you go, there you are.
There you are.
You bring that with you. So
Yeah.
the challenge for us then is to check in with ourselves and say, okay, right where I am in this moment, am I being true to myself? Am I good with where I am right now? Am I feeling something different because maybe I'm comparing myself to someone else and feeling less than in some way? That's where you have to then check in with yourselves. And again, so much of what we talked about was like getting off the hamster wheel, taking time to be with ourselves and figure this stuff out, which is hard work. That's the work we talk about. When we always talk about Diane's work or my work, it's that work of really understanding who you are as a complete person. You know, can you be fearless? What are you afraid of? Are you afraid of judgment? You know, so therefore you distract yourself, you know, because you're grieving or whatever the situation might be. In order to be whole and healthy and happier in a lot of ways, or more content with whatever circumstance, whether the more that you do that work, even though it's hard to do, the better able you are to navigate the ups and downs of life.
Absolutely correct. And it means that a lot of times you can be in the worst place possible, but yet that doesn't dominate you. You actually can experience joy going through difficult times because you're coming from a healthy place with inside you.
Right.
And the really interesting thing about this is this individual work, when you do it, you're doing it to improve who you are because you care about who you are funny part is, that's what you eventually resonate outward. What you resonate is what you nourish internally. It doesn't work the other way around. This is why I'm going to go back to 2020, because this is why we started this. We started seeing things. When you are looking outside of you to make circumstances and people change because you feel that that is what will make you feel better as a person, it doesn't work that way.
No.
It works from inside and it generates outward.
Because we can't control.
Thank you.
We can't control anything else, anyone else. The only thing that we have control of is how we respond and react to situations, how we decide to show up.
Right.
You know, and that's something that I think was a big lesson that a lot of people got over this last period of time. The 2 weeks, was it 2 weeks to flatten the curve?
I love
a lot of people, that's the message that they figured out is like you can't control. That was a very big visible thing, but in actuality you can't control anything outside of yourself, right?
It goes back to outcome. This is why we're talking about this today. It goes back to outcome. How many people walked around last year trying to control an outcome in their life via other people, meaning that I want you to change. I want you to do what I think is right.
Right. And I'm going to do 5,000 foot view. It just, that all happened and all it was very visible.
Right.
It happens all the time. It's always happened all the time.
Right.
That just happened to be the container it fit in.
And it was visible.
It was
more visible than normal.
And it got everybody where they lived, right? If you want to really like scare somebody, you know, you talk about their health or the boogeyman, the unseen, the invisible, right? Because that's all things that, again, I can't see it. So therefore, are things lurking as opposed to something that's, wear your seatbelt in the car when you drive because whatever,
Concrete.
Right. And so that just simply became the container that all of that fit into. And I think it became very apparent who was comfortable with the idea of not having that control and only controlling themselves and not being comfortable and feeling out of control, feeling everything was different. Everything you knew just sort of exploded. And there you were left with, everywhere you go, there you are, and that's what you had,
That's what your experience was.
So that was such a learning experience, and my attitude is that no matter what circumstance you're going through, no matter what's going on in the world around or in your own small world or your family or whatever, there is blessing and learning opportunity. Yes. To be able to look back at something and say, you know what, I won't handle a circumstance of XYZ the same way anymore because of what I've learned and how I've grown and what I know about myself now. And you will have opportunities to try that out and to say like, wow, well, the last time I was financially in this place, I freaked out, I cried, I felt sick, I threw up, I ran out and did, the worst possible thing that was impulsive. And this time when I see this fluctuation, I go, all right, I'm okay. And what's the next right thing? And I'm not going to panic. I'm not going to
judge yourself.
Yeah.
Again.
Hard on myself. I'm not going to, and to be able to say like, wow, I'm not crying all the time, or I don't feel sick to my stomach, or I'm going to take more of I'm going to be in this moment, and in this moment right now, everything is okay.
Here's the interesting thing. It is okay. Mm-hmm. What you did was good enough. Mistakes are not bad. If you choose to learn from them, mistakes are a great gift. And that's why wherever you go, there you are is such an important concept if you want it. This book was published in 1994, and I know you can still find it. The bottom line is it's about not being non-judgmental. It's about accepting yourself for all the flaws and all the greatness, all the good and all the not so great that you are, and working with that. But we as human beings, and especially in this country, different generations have been socialized in different ways. But one thing we share is we are so highly critical of ourselves.
Yeah.
We are so, and Nancy always brings us up, and it catches my attention, and I learn from her too, which is this comparison thing. You know, I think when it comes down to it, this country is constantly sending messages of comparison. I don't necessarily always look at that, Nancy, because over the course of years of doing my work and maybe just a little bit of who I am, I've had my downtimes. Oh my God, I've had my downtimes. But I tend to be a little bit of a rebel when I know that there's something being pushed at me from a big society standpoint. Mm-hmm. And comparison, that usually I'm aware of like that. And I tend to push back. You know, like, how dare you do that? How dare you push me in that direction where I find myself comparing myself to someone else? Because there's no productive outcome to it if you think about it.
Right, but we were raised in an environment where we knew that.
Yes, we were, and that's a great.
That's not the environment that people are raised in anymore.
Right now, yeah, absolutely.
I think people have been conditioned to look to comparison, to look to how many likes you've got or how many virtual friends or whatever you
there
have.
You go. Great point.
That's where your power goes. And
great
that's
point.
Who we've all been conditioned to look to that to be our mommy, our daddy, our faith, our God, our all of those things, because the other things have been removed.
Right.
The other things aren't carrying the same weight that they used to. It used to be really important, you know, what your mother thought or what your dad thought of you, and we wanted to please them and do well for them, whatever. And I think there's just been such a push to remove that and make it be more about other things.
Right.
And that goes back to, though, like, who's got your power? Who are you giving that power to?
Facebook likes. I'm just going to say this. I'm going to say this right now. I'm not a fan. I honestly, for the very reason you're talking about, which is there's so much socialization that has gone on when it comes to how many people like you.
Right.
Now, yeah, here we go. Okay, so we ask you at the end of this to like us, right? Because that's the tool we're using.
We gotta play the game.
But when the day comes to an end, I don't base my self-worth on that.
Right.
I know what I bring to the table. I know that sometimes I'm going to have people who like me for who I am, and sometimes I'm going to have people that don't like me for who I am. I can't control that. Right. And that is a lifelong learning process for me. But you're right. We've got generations now that were not socialized the way we were. And they do look at their Facebook likes, and when somebody defriends them, I guess. Unfriends. I'm not on Facebook. Unfriends
Snapchat,
them,
TikTok,
and the underlying psychological ramifications of, oh my God, that person unliked me.
Well, I remember being in high school and walking down the hall, right? Can you relate? And like this person's coming the other way, and you're like all like, because you think they're gonna say hi, Nancy, and they don't because they're in their own world or they're talking to someone else or whatever, and you're crushed.
Right, you're crushed.
Like you go home and you're like, oh my God, they hate you. I can't
say hello to me.
You know, and it's like, it really doesn't matter.
But isn't that what's going on here?
I gave that person power. They were going to make my day a good day or a bad day based on whether or not they said hi, Nancy. Like
right.
Really
and now the new,
time to grow up.
Well, and now the new generations are experiencing that via social media.
Well, and I have a chapter coming out in my new book that's called "The Entire World Has Turned into High School." Because it has, and it's time to grow up. It's time to like take personal responsibility and do what you need to do. And the thing that, here's again, 5,000-mile view is, how did it get here? How did it get to this place? Where were you? Where was I? What were we thinking?
That's a whole other show.
Right?
How did we get here?
How did we get here? How did we get to this place where all these things somehow took on all this power and became acceptable and whatever, or, you know what I mean? Like, we're not blameless in all of this.
Right. I agree.
You know, we're not blameless. And it's not to say that we bear the fault of it, but there was a lot, because if you look at the whole picture, right, if we keep people and we stay on that, the hamster wheel, and we're just trying to do what we got to do to get by for the weekend, how aware are we about what's really going on? How aware are we about ourselves and taking the time to just have downtime and be still with ourselves? We don't have it. You know,
That's
so
why
I
we're
look
doing
at that
what
and I
we're
go
doing.
like, it's all kind of like spider webby filling all in, you know, like it all kind of goes together and knits together where you start going, you know, well, this, and then this, and then this, and then, oh, then this, and then this, and then this, and then, oh, this. I mean,
Well, that's why we're doing what we're doing.
Right.
We want people to slow down. We want people to start to take responsibility for their choices and understand why they're doing what they're doing, and not be on the treadmill, not be on automatic pilot. Have some sense of self-awareness on why you make the choices you make, because then you're not going to be looking to place blame on everybody outside of you because you're not happy. Oh, I didn't make the right choice. The outcome, I didn't get the outcome I wanted. Because I didn't make the right choice because something outside of me interfered in my ability to be happy.
Stop being a victim.
Stop being. Oh, okay, that's another show. That's a whole.
We're getting all kinds of ideas. You can give us ideas in the comments too.
You want to talk about where to operate from? Where do you operate from? Do you operate from a victim mentality, which is you take no responsibility for anything that goes on in your life? So, but I don't want to go down that road.
Right, that's like playing your life like dodgeball, where you just sort of like stand there and like and try to dodge whatever's.
But if you have a healthy ego, and you're not attached to outcomes to the point that you're not enjoying the process and the journey in your life and being present, like when Nancy said she made somebody laugh, or she was singing, and she moved someone. That's being in the present moment. That's enjoying the process in lieu of the outcome, because guess what? We don't control every facet of our lives. And it's not about the doom and gloom of what we don't control. It's about the joy of what we do have a say in. And we do get to enjoy happy moments.
Right.
We are invested in people in an honest way and not in a false way. That's what this is about. That's what ego and outcome. But I'm going to ask Nancy this now. I'm going to ask you, Nancy, if what would you say would be your advice to people right now when it comes to your personal experience and the things you've learned? What would be a good tool to impart? And then I'm going to give one too before we wrap up. But what would be a good tool that you would offer someone when it comes to healthy ego and not being attached to an outcome of a decision and allowing that sense of healthy ego to carry you through? What would be your words?
Well, I would say, first of all, realize how unbelievably amazing and powerful you actually are. I think we grow up kind of hearing the negatives much louder than the positives. One of the things I learned in teaching folks was that you always go in with a positive and then you correct, because if you are on if you're positive, I think that whoever you're speaking with, and this is yourself, we're on the same side. We're on the same side, and then the correction comes for whatever it might be. So I would say the first thing in all of this is to love yourself, to be gentle with yourself. Think about how you speak in your head to yourself, because I think we are, like Diane was saying, we're unbelievably hard on ourselves.
Yes.
We have these high, really unrealistic expectations, and we throw those out to other people sometime, but really, like, I say things to myself that I would never say to anyone outside of myself, especially not someone I'm trying to be a friend to, or a family member. Hey, Mom, whatever. I would never do that, but I'm okay with somehow doing it to myself. And I think that there's a feeling of lack of value there. How do you treat things that are valuable in your life? You treat them well. Treat yourself well. And when you start to do that, I think a lot of the other things sort of level out, because you accept yourself. And when you accept yourself, you're not worried about how someone else views you. You're not worried about what the outcome might be.
There you go.
And my tool, I would say, again, is something that I use all the time, where I have to stop for a moment in a situation where I'm feeling like something coming up, and it's, what am I hoping to get from this? Mm-hmm. What am I needing right now? Am I feeling a little insecure and I want somebody to say, like, hey, that you're smart? Because I'm having a hard time saying that to myself. And when you do that, it disarms the whole situation. It takes the power out of the other person's response and, hi, I want you to validate me. Here's my whole everything. And they're like, who are you? I don't want to do that. That's not my job. It's our job to do that for ourselves.
Right.
So when we can kind of take that step back and say, what am I looking for? Or if I did something and I didn't get some response back that I wanted and it left me in a weird place, well, what was I expecting? To be able. But again, this involves being aware enough to take that breath, get present, and say, okay, right now in this moment, what am I feeling?
Right.
That's the hard part when we're go, go, go all the time and worrying about everybody else and trying to take care of everyone else and all of that kind of stuff. We need to know that we're valuable enough to put ourselves first,
Right.
which is a very counterculture, that sounds selfish.
That's a message that has gone away. Now it's perceived as selfish.
Right, and it's
But
not selfish.
It's not selfish.
Taking care of yourself is really a loving thing because the better you are for yourself, the better you are for everyone else.
Exactly
right?
correct.
So, and I think also another tool, I guess, or it's not even a tool as much as it's a phrase that I use, which is everyone has their own stuff. Right? Where if somebody doesn't text back right away, we immediately assume, oh my God, what did I do? They hate me. Oh, they're not, blah, blah, blah. Why didn't they? And it's like, you know what? They have their own stuff going on. Maybe they're busy. Maybe they're sleeping. Maybe their phone broke. Maybe they're handling a family emergency. Maybe they're just taking some time to mull this over. Maybe they didn't feel that a response was actually being
Warranted.
required from them.
Warranted.
Right. So it's that forgiveness because you're gentle and forgiving with yourself because you're doing the best you can. And offering that also to the other person in the situation or the world or whatever it is. So
Right.
that would be mine.
Thank you. And I'm on board with everything you said. I would just add my own tool to this, and I'll go back to what I said earlier. Humility. Humility is a very grounding, what would we call humility? It's a very grounding emotional characteristic that I have benefited from in my life that has helped me to keep my ego in a healthy place. Actually, humility, if you can remember to be humble, and sometimes humility comes, for me, it came in the form of breast cancer. I had to learn that there was a lot I could not control. And cancer, I look at as a gift. The gift of humility, the gift of teaching me that I don't control it all. That's a fallacy. It's a big fallacy. It contributes to unhealthy ego. So I would say as my tool that to be humble from time to time in life is not a bad thing. If anything, it teaches you to have greater empathy and compassion for people when they're hurting, when their ego's not in a good place, where they need to be lifted up. And it can turn a negative, such as being diagnosed with breast cancer, it can turn it into a positive. When you realize that you do need other people. You need other people in your life. You need the connectedness to heal, to be healthy, to remain healthy. So for me, I would say I'm on board with everything Nancy said, but maybe perhaps add humility to a day or two in your life.
Well, and I think that goes with ego.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I'm saying. It's a
It
component.
ties in to be in that place of humility and humbleness. We look at that like in our mind. You hear those words and you think, "Oh, that's low. That's just I'm putting myself lower."
No.
The reality of being humble and having humility is that ability to meet people where they are and to realize
Right.
that everybody has their own path and their own place they are in their journey, and there's a lot more that we have in common.
Right.
It's not who's better, who's worse, and all of that. That's all a lot of like judgmenty stuff that's put on there. And so the secret is really, like we talk about the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and that goes back to the whole don't be an asshole. It really does. In a nutshell, right? And wherever you go, there you are. So if you're an asshole here, you're going to be an asshole there. That's how it is. And, there's beauty in every circumstance that we go through in life. If
we
you
choose
look
to
for it,
find-
you gotta reframe.
That's right.
Reframe to look at the opportunities for learning, operation, the opportunities for growth, the operation. I keep saying operation. The opportunity to move forward and to grow, and that's really like the beauty of all of it and why we're here.
Right.
To understand and to fall in love with ourselves and all of the things that we have, and to remove like that value statement of like, well, I like this about myself, but I hate that about myself, or
Right.
whatever. It's that learning to love all of us, because none of us are perfect. All
Right.
of us have, our
And
stuff.
we're human beings, and I think on that note, considering Cup of Joe's is starting to get busy
It's
now.
getting full. They're gonna get
So
loud.
you might start hearing them again. So we will, on that note, cling our cups together. Thank you for sharing some time, spending some time with us. Like us, subscribe, tell your friends. We really would like to build our channel. Please comment.
Right, I was going to say leave comments, because I
Please
think
leave
that there,
comments.
I think that there are a lot of you out there that can relate on some level, and also have your own wisdom to bring to us. I'm always wanting to learn more
Right,
from other
and-
people, as is Diane.
As I
You've got
am.
a lot to teach us too.
So remember, what's next is
Tap
into
into
your
your
badass.
badass.
Bye, guys.
Bye.